Thank you all for joining us for another webinar, this one titled Breakthrough Glass Recycling Opportunities. My name is Luke Truman. I'm with Allagash Brewing Company. Allagash is a founding member of the Glass Recycling Coalition, and I am the chair of the Glass Champions Committee. What you're here for is one of many webinars and presentations available in the tools section of the Glass Recycling Coalition website at no cost to you. Go ahead to the next one. Our list of presenters today include myself, Laura Hennemann of Strategic Materials, Kerry of Balcones Resources, Marianne Remolador of Northeast Recycling Council, and Sarah Mason of the City of Houston. Your controls can be found on the right of your screen, and including the ability to ask questions, which we will address at the end, and we would love to hear from you. And we'll also be recording this. It'll be on the website, and you can find it on YouTube as well. The Glass Recycling Coalition is a group of about 40 member companies and organizations representing the entire value chain of glass with one goal, which is making glass recycling work. And here's a list of the member companies and organizations. And here's a graphic of the value chain of glass. It is important to note that although glass is 100% recyclable, there is not one solution for all communities, and any use of recovered glass saves resources. We refined our 2017 survey and launched another in 2018, which included 300 plus participants, and we found that 90% of folks expect to be able to recycle glass, and 54% of public sector respondents are proactively trying to improve their systems. Our website has a ton of very useful resources, including the tools mentioned earlier and many more, including fresh off the press, a Glass Champions talking points to add to your quiver of information. Here's a sneak preview. This includes a hierarchy of use, types of systems, and a section called Why Use Glass. It's available on the website and super useful. So please cruise the website. There's a lot of information, including a resource map, which is under the tools section. And this allows you to save a bunch of time and effort in doing research, and basically allows you to connect the dots, no pun intended. So thank you very much for taking the time and giving us your attention. And I'll go ahead and kick it off with Laura Hennemann of Strategic Materials.
Thanks, Luke. So everyone who is on the call, thanks so much for joining. I'm going to go through a little bit about Strategic Materials. If you can click the next slide, we'll go through the agenda. A little bit about Strategic Materials. We're going to talk through some of the myths that you may have heard about glass. Explain why glass is important for markets and demand, and from a MRF and city perspective, how to increase your glass value. So a little bit about Strategic Materials. Hopefully some of you on the call know us, but if you don't, we are the largest glass recycler in North America. We have nearly 50 locations in the US, Canada, and Mexico. We have been recycling glass since the 1890s, so we've been in business for a very long time, which I think is a further point to why glass recycling is so important. It's been around for a long time, and it's something that there's always going to be a need for. We provide service to a variety of markets. So we take glass and we process it and we provide it into markets such as container glass, so back into glass manufacturing, fiberglass insulation, highway bead, and then we also do some specialty products like fillers or decorative glass, abrasives. And then in Canada, we also recycle post-industrial plastic. And we recycle nearly 3 million tons of glass a year. So debunking myths. This is always a fun one because I hear a variety of things every day about glass. So one myth or one claim that we've heard a lot is broken glass cannot be accepted. And the fact is, we accept broken glass. So we actually prefer it because you can get more into your container to bring it to us. So broken glass is accepted. Another claim is mixed colored glass cannot be accepted. We do accept mixed colored glass. We do have a need to separate cut by color for some applications, but we have equipment in order to do that. So we use optical sorters to separate the glass by color, so that when it comes into us, it's no problem if it's mixed. Another claim is glass must be washed and cleaned. Although we would prefer that, labels and organics, that are on the glass don't present a problem for us. Again, that's part of our processing for us to get rid of those items. So to be washed and clean isn't needed. Glass contaminates other recyclables. I hear this one probably on a daily basis, and I will say single stream contaminates each other. So in single stream, and everything's mixed together, everything is commingled, and that you could make a case either way about who is contaminating who. And for us, it's just more about how to best handle the process and sequence and layout at the MRF level to help maximize your value. And I think Kerry will touch on that, who's our next presenter. But continuing on to the next claim, glass cannot be recycled due to China's sword policy. This is not true. We are impacted a little bit by China's sword policy only because MRFs are looking at ways to cut costs because of other material issues that are going on, and maybe looking for some different solutions around glass specifically. But glass is produced and recycled domestically, so we've never sent glass to China and don't have any plans to send any glass to China. Next claim, glass has no value and belongs in landfill, or the value of glass has gone down. Glass does have value. It varies. It can be maximized with some of the best practices found at the GRC or found with strategic materials. With the proper equipment, we can provide glass value to local communities and MRFs. What has hurt glass is contamination. The amount of garbage which comes in is what hurts the value of glass. So that could be ceramics, plastics, metals, etc. And the final claim, I believe there's one more. There are no end markets for glass. Again, this is one I hear every single day. End markets do exist. In fact, in many regions, demand for recycled glass exceeds our current supply. So in some locations, we are even shipping glass in from other states just to meet demand in some regions. So I mentioned the end markets earlier, but the primary markets really are container glass, so back into glass manufacturing, and fiberglass installation, highway bead, and more. And all of those are high value glass end markets. Those, I know what we don't have on here that some of you may be thinking about too is landfill cover or road base aggregate. Any way you can reuse glass, we're supportive of. We just focus on high value markets. Next slide, please. So why glass? It's a little more focus on our end markets. We've listed some of our customers who use glass and container manufacturing, fiberglass installation. Hopefully some of these look familiar. These are all key partners of ours, and some are also GRC members, so they're helping to keep the value of glass strong and helping to find some solutions around glass recycling to increase the amount of glass we're recovering in the stream. We also provide services for some specialty items like flat glass, so Fuyao Glass America. We do some on-site closed loop recycling specifically for them and some other clients like them. And highway bead is another one where it's kind of a reflective strip in the highway. So when you kind of see the center line and there's a reflection, that is typically glass. But I guess one question people would ask is why do you want to use recycled content? Why would they care other than maybe they feel good about doing something for the environment? But for container glass manufacturing and for fiberglass installation, it reduces energy and CO2 emissions. It can increase throughput when they have a high demand time because it melts at a lower temperature. Recycled content melts at a lower temperature than virgin materials, which therefore also extends the furnace life of those manufacturers. So there could be less maintenance or less need to replace the furnace over time. For some of the other markets, there's LEED credits, in particular for fillers and insulation. And for probably a consumer, it's chemically inert and safe packaging doesn't change the taste of the product that's inside. And most importantly, hot topic right now, it is ocean friendly. So we don't have the same challenges as plastic right now. And glass is likely the most stable commodity in the last 5 years. All of these benefits positively impact local economies through job support. Next slide. So real quickly, I want to talk about quality. And I know I talked about contamination and glass supply. For some of you on the phone, on the left side, that might look like the glass that you see, which typically looks more like trash. But that is a lot of what we receive into our facility and have to process and turn into glass and recycle what else we can and landfill the remaining items. But as you can see, because there's more processing costs, because it's harder for us to move it through the system, because there's an increased landfill cost to us, it's typically a negative value glass that's coming to our door. Whereas when there's a deposit glass or redemption glass, whether it's source separated glass, if it's a dual stream glass only pickup, that's typically a positive value. That's considered very clean glass on the right side. Next slide. So in correspondence with the previous slide that was more visual, one thing we've developed is a pricing matrix. So glass price is directly tied to the quality. So you can see here, we'll have a certain matrix where we'll do a small test of the material that would be coming in, and we'll measure the undersize or the non-glass residuals, which are considered contamination. And then you can see by the percentage of that where the value would lie. So this is just an example of that, but hopefully gives you a good idea of what we use to help measure a price. So one solution we have beyond the pricing matrix was we typically will work with the MRF, especially in certain regions where we really need high quality glass to meet demand. And the benefit to us is, just as I explained earlier, was improved processing efficiency. It reduces landfill costs for us, and it gives a higher quality end product, which is cullet, into our end market. The benefits to the supplier, which the example would be like a MRF or a city, would be lower tipping fees, and it's an easy roadmap to improve your quality of your glass. So this example is one from 2016. We sent some of our colleagues into the facility and designed a new cleanup system. So it might be changing the process, or it could be adding a new piece of equipment. And when we did that, the MRF financed the equipment. However, it was pre-negotiated about the quality of glass that would result from those investments and what the payback period would be. And it was a $12 per ton improvement, and therefore it was the payback period was less than 2 years on that capital investment by the MRF. So key takeaway to wrap up my section is we're the largest glass recycler in North America. We like to think of ourselves as the experts and solution providers, and we recycle a variety of glass. As I mentioned, demand for recycled content and for recycled glass exceeds current supply, so we're working very hard to help find ways to get more glass from the stream and keep it out of the landfill. I understand there's a lot of myths about glass, but for us, we ask, trust those claims and those myths, but verify with your local processor, your city, or an end market, whoever it might be. Reach out and get the full picture. And glass is valuable, so we're here to help. If you have an issue you're facing, feel free to contact us, and we will do our best to help you. This is my contact information, at least my email, and happy to answer questions when the Q&A time is available. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kerry from Balcones Resources for more information about his operation.
Laura, thank you, and I appreciate it. I always enjoy hearing what you all have to say. Luke, thank you for moderating this, and Marissa, thank you for putting this program together. Let's go to the next slide there. we've got a drinking problem, mainly in Austin, Texas. Give you all a little bit of perspective in regard to this slide. We do the recycling for about 60% of the households in the city of Austin, and the glass portion of the single stream material that we bring in each month constitutes about 27% of the total volume of material. And we knew this going into our original proposal with the city. They wanted to recycle glass, and honestly, we had no experience with it. But the solutions we've been able to come up with have been received very well by all. I want to tell you all a little bit about who we are. Balcones Resources is an environmental services holding company. We own Balcones Recycling, which has operating facilities in Austin, Dallas, and Little Rock. We believe we're the largest material processor in the south central United States. We built a new MRF in Austin in 2012 with about a 30-ton an hour processing capability. It's on a 10-acre campus where our corporate headquarters is located, and it represents about a $25 million capital investment on our part. The next bullet point, we recycle about 10 to 12,000 tons of material a month. The last 90 days, that has averaged about 15,000 tons a month. And we also, in addition to this city of Austin, process material for about 16 communities and 500 commercial customers. We send about 1,500 to 1,700 tons a month to Strategic Materials Facility in Midlothian, Texas, which is just south of Dallas. It's about a 180-mile drive. Talk a little bit about determining the viability of what anyone is recycling, and there's a lot of chatter about, obviously about glass and other items in the stream now, particularly since markets have deteriorated over the past year. But this little chart is something that we use to determine the viability of whatever it is we're going to recycle, whether it's glass, whether it's cartons, whether it's toothpicks, whether it's paper. There have to be viable end markets. We need to know what our processing costs are on a per ton basis. There has to be a consistent inbound supply, and we've got to be able to make money doing this. And so those are all considerations that are heavily vetted before our company decides to embark upon any new items. In addition to this, our customers in Central Texas wanted to recycle glass 5 or 6 years ago when we built our MRF, and other people are running away from it a bit now, and honestly, we view that as a bit of a competitive advantage. We've embraced it and have spent the money on processing systems. I'll talk about it briefly here in just a moment. Next, please. The Texas Recycling Data Initiative was conducted by the consulting engineers Burns and McDonald a couple of years ago on behalf of STAR, which is the State of Texas Alliance for Recycling. And they looked at the waste stream across the state. This information is almost 3 years old, but it's the most recent data that we have. And essentially what it shows there at the bottom is that we're recycling about 137,000 tons. Balcones at that time was doing about 15,000 tons, or 11% of what was recycled across the state. Next, please. This is a photograph of our MRF 3 days before it opened. We're in a 100,000 square foot building. We did do quite a bit of research related to a glass cleanup system before we got involved in this business. And honestly, the thought of recycling glass is something we hadn't done before, really gave us a great deal of concern because we'd had no experience with it. And we're primarily, our roots are in the paper business. And we are mill suppliers to fine printing and writing mills, to mills that make linerboard and tissue and toweling. So we're very conscious of cross-contamination issues. And honestly, the system that we chose for glass cleanup was one that took the glass out of our stream immediately following the pre-sort stations that you see there in the foreground of the picture. At the bottom of the pre-sort station, there are 2 glass breakers and a conveyor on the other side of that line that you're not able to see, that carries the material to a shaker screen and then an aspirator, which is like a vacuum that pulls off the light material, and then the heavy, which is the glass, continues on to our feedstock pile outside the building. And I have a video on that here right now that I'd like to share with you. So if we could click the on button here. This is the material that comes out of the glass breaker, and you can see the glass commingled with shredded paper, with wine bottle corks, and any number of items. And there it is traveling across a shaker screen, and you can see the light items being vacuumed off the feedstock, and you can also see the type of condition that it's in. And then the glass now no longer goes into a roll-off box, but you can get a bit of a glimpse of the quality there. And all of that material goes to strategic materials. So that's essentially what we do. You have to, in our view, be dedicated to the notion of glass recycling. And as I said, we view it as a competitive advantage in our marketplace if we can provide that for our customers. This is something that the municipalities we deal with, and specifically the city of Austin, demand. They have a very aggressive zero waste policy in place that they are trying to meet with several steps before they reach zero waste in 2040. So this is what our part of the equation is, and we send all this to strategic materials. We've been doing it now with them since our inception here with the MRF in Austin. We've never had an issue with cross-contamination or a claim from a mill. And I think that's very important to understand. That was our biggest concern when we got into this business. And it just hasn't been an issue for us because we take it out aggressively on the front end and have a way to clean it up. There are maintenance costs associated with this system, and it's something that we have a weekly and monthly protocol designed to take care of any preventative maintenance. And one of the nice things about recycling glass is that in our MRF, it's the one item we don't touch. So there's once you spend the money to and invest the capital required to put the right equipment in place, and if you do the maintenance on a regular basis to the system, you're in pretty good shape. So our experience has been quite positive. And that's all that I've got. I'm happy to answer questions. You can see our website information there, and please have a look at it. We're about to launch a new site within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we're happy to be a member of the Glass Recycling Coalition. It's important to our business. We've been involved with the GRC since, I guess it's second or third organizational meeting. It's been a positive experience for us, and I would urge anyone else out there listening in to become involved. Thank you. Mary Ann, we're going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kerry. My name is Mary Ann Remolador. I'm the Assistant Director with the Northeast Recycling Council, and I'd like to talk with you today about a project that we have involving glass. But before we start, Marissa, if you could go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about who NERC is. We've been around for about 31 years. We're a nonprofit organization working with the 11 Northeast states on sustainable materials management issues. We do that by implementing projects as well as various consulting projects, and also through, we also manage several national programs. Our board is made up of the 11 Northeast states environmental agencies, and we also have another category of membership, which is advisory members, who are private industry, municipal and county government, consultants, nonprofits, essentially others who are interested in recycling. Next slide. So we created a glass committee in August of 2017, and as a first project that we decided to work on, and this was with a group of about 17 people. It's a diverse group of industry, government, nonprofits, and consultants. That we decided that the primary issue with glass in the Northeast was the glass coming out of MRFs. So we decided to do a survey of the MRFs within the Northeast, and we analyzed those results, and that's what I'll be presenting to you. Next slide. But before we get into those details, I just want to lay out a little bit about the Northeast region. We're talking about the states from Maine all the way down to Maryland. 5 of those states have bottle bills. 3 of the states have the container disposal bans, and then 7 have glass container recycling requirements. Next slide. So the report that we have, which is available now on our website as well as the GRC's website, includes a lot of information, and here's a list of the different pieces of information you can find in that report. But essentially, we looked at not only the towns in which the MRF was servicing, as well as the MRF itself and how they were processing, cleaning, and the quality of the glass that they were that was coming out of their facilities, and where they were sending their glass, and what they thought the issues are with glass recycling at the facility level. Next slide. So I'll present to you some highlights from the report, and this is just pieces of information. There's a lot more in the report. I encourage you all to go and look at the report itself. But one of the key pieces of information that we found is that we knew that there was a substantial amount of glass, more than half going to glass processors. We also knew there was a lot going to landfills, either as alternative daily cover or as trash. Those numbers were higher than I think the committee thought they would be. So that was an eye-opener and good information to have. There's also a category here, which is RB Ag. That is road-based aggregate, if anybody's wondering. But this gave us, and we recognize all of the information from the report is a snapshot in time. At the time we were surveying, which was at the last year, or I'm sorry, earlier this year, that this is what's happening. Now we know changes in the marketplace happen continuously, and that these numbers change a little bit over time, and just have to keep that in mind when looking at it. Next slide. So one of the pieces of information that we pulled out was if the MRFs are doing additional cleaning of the glass that runs through the facility. And you see of the 46 MRFs that responded to this question, only 30 of them responded that they are not doing additional cleaning of the glass. So the way it comes out of the facility is the way it's going into the marketplace. Next slide. Oh, and I should mention that we had almost a 50% response rate from the MRFs. So we think that we felt very positive about the response rate, that we felt like we could really, there was good information here that we could put some trust in overall. Another key piece of information is shown here on this graph, which is the if the MRFs had made upgrades to their facility for glass in the past 3 years. And you'll see of those that answered this question, the majority had not. So this was another key piece of information that we found very insightful. Next slide. Here we show this graph I'd like to spend a little time on because there were only 6 MRFs which had the percent of non-glass residue or fines of being 10% or less. We wanted to look at why that might be, because as you saw with Laura's slides before, the lower percentage of NGR and fines will get you the highest value for your materials. So we wanted to find out how these MRFs achieve those low percentage rates. And you can see here we have the collection, the type of collection program in those towns, and then the cleaning systems within the MRFs. And we also looked at if they had made upgrades. Now you'll notice the first 2 who reported 0 fines and NGR, that one, they hadn't made upgrades, but their collection methods were source separated at the facility, curbside and the facility, or they had drop-off locations. So the material coming into the MRF was very clean. And you'll notice that top one, they're using manual labor to further clean their glass once it got to the facility. And then the remaining 4 had, or 2 of the remaining 4 had dual stream, and then, but their cleaning systems were more extensive. They had more technology that was allowing them to clean up their material beyond what it was when it came into the facility. And they had made upgrades to those technologies. And then at the very bottom, you'll see that the last 2 are single stream, and the one is a dual stream combination, dual stream and single stream communities for that one MRF. But again, they've made the upgrades to their technology, and they had a greater number of machineries that were cleaning up the systems once they were going through the MRFs. Next slide. This, when we were looking at all of this information that was coming that information that was being provided to us by the MRFs, it was also at a time in the Northeast where there was a lot of change in the glass markets, and we thought it's we need to talk about here a little bit. In 2017, there were 6 glass manufacturers and 10 glass processing facilities. In 2018, the only glass container manufacturer, which was in Massachusetts, and then 2 glass processing facilities, one in Rhode Island and one in Massachusetts, all closed. So that left us in a bind, if you will, because there was no local companies processing and or manufacturing the glass that was coming from the towns, specifically from New England. This made it extremely difficult. Next slide. So we looked at both the information from the MRFs and then the information that we were able to obtain about these various market upheavals, and we came to several conclusions. One is that the MRFs with the lowest percent of non-glass residue in fines have invested in their systems to make their glass cleaner so that the glass coming out of their facility has a higher value. It still has to go to a processor, but it may not have to be processed as much, so it still has a higher value than dirtier glass. The second is that the end markets, it really became extremely evident that unless you have the end markets for that glass, both in the processors and manufacturers, that it makes it extremely difficult to find end markets for those glass, for the MRF glass. Now we know the bottle bill glass typically finds its way to the marketplace without much trouble at all, and we were specifically looking at the MRF glass here. Since we've done this report, we have heard that different companies who are either processing or manufacturing glass, that in order for their economics to make it economically viable for them to handle the glass or to use the glass, that they're talking about a radius of 150 to 500 miles of getting that glass and being able to use it in an economical fashion. Next slide. And we know that more glass processing capacity is needed either in New England or to service New England. New England right now has more glass than we have companies to deal with it. So as a result, a lot of alternative end uses of glass, it's becoming looked at as a possible location for alternative end uses for that recycled glass. Another thing that became very evident through all of this work is that a lot of MRFs had not measured either their contamination levels and the quality of the glass going out, and that in order for the glass to have a value, more emphasis has to be placed on measuring and reducing the contamination as well as the cleaning process for that glass. Next slide. So here is my contact information, and I don't have the link to the report here, but it is available if you go to NERC's website and the GRC's, and if you search under resources, it's available on both places. And now I'd like to pass things over to Sarah Mason, who is the recycling manager for the City of Houston. Sarah?
Great. Thank you, Mary Ann. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to have this opportunity today to share a bit about Houston and our recycling programs. So I'd like to give a little background on the services we offer, the history of our Curbside program, the recent challenges we had, how we adapted to those, and what the future holds for curbside recycling in Houston. Yes, next slide. Thank you. So I represent the City of Houston Solid Waste Management Department. We are the department responsible for providing solid waste services to Houston residents. We service residents in single-family homes, 8 units or less by ordinance, which comes out to about 430,000 customers. We provide direct services to about 390,000 of those homes. The others choose to contract a higher level of service, usually with a private hauler. The services that we offer include garbage, recycling, yard waste, tree and junk waste collection. We operate our drop-off centers and also do disaster recovery. Our Curbside program began in 1990, about the same time many curbside programs were picking up across the country. Originally, the program was a dual stream program collected in an 18-gallon bin. We collected bottles and cans on one side and fiber on the other side in a rear loader truck. We started with just 27,000 homes, and it grew to over 200,000 homes at the peak of the program. However, it never was a citywide program, meaning that all of the residents who had city-provided garbage collection did not necessarily have city-provided curbside collection. And that was a goal for us, which we were able to achieve in February of 2015. We, for the first time ever, all Houston residents who had city-provided solid waste services also had, as part of that, city curbside collection. And with that change came our single stream program. We moved away from the dual stream bins to a large 96-gallon cart for single stream collection. The dual stream program did not include glass. It was never a part of the program. However, when we made the switch to single stream, because of the requests received from residents over the years, everyone identified glass as a recyclable item, which we did take at our drop-offs, but they wanted to be able to recycle it at their curb as well. So we did include glass in our single stream program from the beginning. And so at this time in February of 2015, everyone had a big green cart and they could put their glass in it, and it was a very happy time. However, with that win in February 2015, that came just in time to start negotiating our single stream processing contract. It was up for renewal in February of 2016. And due to the changes that were happening in the recycling industry and marketplace and challenges, primarily, the processing cost was the same, but it was seeming to be higher because the commodity values were so much lower. And so the processors that we were up for renewal with informed the city that in order to renew the contract, we needed to find a way to share the cost. Historically, as part of that contract, the city had agreed to a zero floor, meaning that if the value of the material didn't cover our processing cost, we didn't have to write a check to the processor. And really, the industry is moving more away from that, but that used to be pretty typical of contracts. So after much negotiation, the decision was reached to remove glass as part of our accepted items. And it wasn't an easy call or one that was made very quickly, but it was agreed to in the end because, as I've mentioned, we were moving away from a zero cost contract to needing to pay for the processing. And dropping glass was determined to be one way to reduce that cost. The city, council and mayor wanted to make sure that we were looking out and trying to get the lowest cost that we could. And so we did make that change. But when we made that change, it came with an agreement to Houstonians from Mayor Turner that we would begin a procurement process for the processing contract that would follow this renegotiated one, and we would place a priority on working to incorporate glass back into the cart as part of that new agreement. Next one. And so when we made the program change, we did a direct mail piece that you can see here. This was a postcard that went out to all Houstonians immediately to let them know. Our recycling program really was under the spotlight with this contract renewal. And so the flip side of this actually said to residents, good news, our program continues. We've reached an agreement. One small change, please do not put glass in your cart anymore. We did the direct mail piece. We did web updates, social media, a water bill insert, and we also had coverage from various types of traditional media. In the interim, the city and you heard earlier from Laura with Strategic Materials partnered together to increase the number of drop-off options to Houstonians to recycle their glass. The city operates 9 permanent drop-off sites that have and always have accepted glass for recycling, but we wanted to add, City of Houston covers 640 square miles. It's just a tiny little place. And in order to cover all of that, we wanted to add some additional drop-off sites. And so we partnered with Strategic, who provided these drop-off boxes. We got them decaled and labeled to say glass only. It's for mixed colors glass. We put these, the rebar inserts you see there to limit the size of what could be put in these drop-offs, because oftentimes an unmanned drop-off box just becomes a dumpster if you don't have some type of regulation, and this is a physical restraint so that you can really only fit glass bottles in there. And we put those around at various locations throughout the city. This map shows the orange squares represent where those orange drop-off boxes were placed. Those were locations identified by working with city council and community leaders. One was at a Salvation Army that since had to be removed due to some dumping issues, but we also put them at city parks. One is at a church, one is at another a private recycling company that does drop off and wanted to add glass. And then the light and dark green dots represent the city's permanent drop-off sites. And so the impact of dropping glass is that we learned Houstonians are good at adaptation. Our monthly tonnage, our average monthly tonnage for our recycling did drop about 800 to 1,000 tons. And then in addition, you can see that in our quarterly composition audits, the composition of glass in our single stream mix dropped from about 18-19% pre-program change down to 4% within 6 months. And that was the latest audit shown here is from the fall of 2016, but in our subsequent audits, the glass percentage has never gone back up over 8%, and it's currently around 5%. So we got the message out, please stop putting glass in your bin, and from the data that we've gathered, it would appear that folks listened. So moving forward, we did have the new RFP that went out, and that was awarded to FCC, which is a new company to the Houston market. They're building a brand new single stream MRF, taking into account that glass will be part of the stream. And much like Kerry was mentioning, working to make sure that that glass is handled and recovered in a way to where it will have a higher value and it will keep it out of the other materials that are going to go through the MRF. And so that contract begins in March of next year, and the intent will be to add glass back to our Curbside program once that new MRF is open. The change in the program material was always intended to be temporary to get us through until we could get a longer term new processing contract in place. So some of what we learned through this process is that for those of us that work in the recycling world, we understand things like commodity value and contamination and residual, but trying to communicate that information both up and down to our elected officials and to the public was a good learning curve for us. I think we were ultimately effective in getting our message out, but it did take quite a lot of education to those that don't work in this field every day. And, as I mentioned, Houstonians love to recycle. They were super happy that we had our Curbside program and really rolled with us in making that change of removing glass and are looking forward, I think, to having it added back. And then, we were in part successful with this because we were able to partner with Strategic and other community groups to increase the drop-off locations for residents to make it as easy as possible for them to continue to recycle glass during the time in which it couldn't be recycled at the curb. And that is all of the information I have. I think I'm the last speaker for today, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Hey, Sarah, did you, when you went through your engagement piece to inform people on removing glass from the bin, did you also focus on removing other contaminants? So
the only other item that I think we just put on there was no plastic bags. That's just another large issue for us in terms of contamination. But our messaging was pretty solely focused on the glass due to the terms of our contract. Any additional glass after a certain point was going to start counting as trash. And we were going to have to, that was going to increase our costs. So we were single issue focused on trying to get folks to drop glass from their cart and get it to a drop off instead.
Thank you. Do any of the other panelists have questions for each other? So I'm not seeing any questions coming in from the audience.
Actually, Luke, there's several questions that have come in from the audience. So I know there was one that just came in that was talking about whether crushed glass is worth more than whole glass. I don't know if Strategic wants to address that.
Yeah, I can address that. Whether it's crushed or whole bottle, either is okay. It's really, the value is driven by just the contamination being things other than glass included. So either form is okay, and the value is solely about contamination.
Okay, it looks like we have a question that came in about the experience with workers' compensation, and I would probably send this to either maybe to Kerry to start. What is the experience with workers' compensation due to the handling of glass? This seems like someone who's in the industry. They said, we have experience with industry with waste workers. And I know, Kerry, you are on the hauling side as well as the processing side. So if you want to kind of speak to how those issues affect your business.
Sure, I'm happy to. The bottom line is we have had really, we've only had one issue that I can recall related to a glass, an injury related to glass. That was a hand cut by someone on the pre-sort line who wasn't wearing the protective gear, and that just happened about 6 months ago. But we just give folks the protective gear that's required, and the fact of the matter is the glass spreads out pretty evenly on our belt, and on our pre-sort line it really hasn't been an issue other than that one incident, and that was a bit self-inflicted, if you will. But in regard to insurance rates and that sort of thing, our experience modifier is very low as it relates to handling glass and generally working in the MRF. We have a very highly mechanized process, and most of the sorting that takes place in our facility is related to quality control. It's after a machine has performed a task. So it hasn't been much of an issue for us.
Okay, great. We had some questions that came in for Marianne as far as working in your organization. Did you find it helpful to have, did you find it helpful, and was it difficult to form a glass committee?
It was not difficult to form the committee. I can tell you that the Northeast states were very interested in NERC pursuing a glass committee because they, I would say, in this instance, they were all in agreement that they wanted to support and promote continued glass recycling. So they were very interested in doing that. And it was interesting because when we put the word out to NERC's membership, now that include our board members as well as advisory members, so which included those private industry and nonprofits and consultants, we found we were able to form a group of 17 that were all very interested in figuring out what were the gaps in the glass value chain within the Northeast states. As someone who has helped facilitate those calls, there were moments when I thought it was like herding cats, but difficult. I wouldn't say difficult in that people were difficult to deal with. We had more trouble with trying to contain everyone's enthusiasm in working through the process.
Great. We had a question that came through from, did someone else have something to add?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, Luke, and I know you participate in the glass glass recycling committee through NERC. So if you have any best practices that you want to share from that, please do.
Well, no, it's, I mean, I think that it's a very driven committee that I would agree with Mary Ann, that people are very engaged. I think there's a lot of great resources will come out of that committee, including that survey. I did get one other question for Mary Ann, and I'm not sure the answer to it. Do you know where, since the plants have shut down in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, do you know where that glass is going to?
That is a good question that we have asked time and time again. I don't want to speculate, so I won't answer the question, but I think it's safe to say we're not 100% clear of where that glass. Some of it we know is getting shipped to further locations, and then others we know are being landfilled. But as far as the percentages, we have no information on that.
Got it. And then I've got another question that is, in Tennessee, we are working with tile and ceramic manufacturers who can take recycled glass as a direct feedstock. We're mostly looking for source separator right now. Marissa, do you know if the GRCs worked with that sector? Or Laura, have you worked with the tile sector?
So GRC,
I can answer it.
bottle glass.
Go ahead, Marissa.
Sure. GRC mainly focuses on bottle and container glass, but I'll let Laura has insight on that as well.
Sure. Yes. So we do work in the ceramic and tile industry. One customer that we have that probably people would know on the call is Doll Tile, so who's owned by Mohawk. So they use that kind of as a filler material, but then we also have them using products on our decorative side of our glass. So we own a company called American Specialty Glass, and they melt glass down. It's 100% recycled glass. They change the color and they provide different sizes, and that goes in to kind of give some color to the countertops or to tiles. So we do work with that sector, but I can't say specifically if we work with that person in Tennessee or that company in Tennessee.
Got it.
Hey, Luke, can I add some information to the last question that you had for me?
Absolutely.
So one of the industry sectors, the alternative end market sector that is growing, I guess you could say, is using glass for road-based aggregate. And this is particularly happening in New Hampshire and in Vermont, in that the glass being collected, in many cases, is source separated. It's clean glass, and it is going into road base that is like parking lots and driveways, so used by contractors in New Hampshire, because there are no restrictions of them using it in that way in that state. In Massachusetts, they are also, they over this past year have given out some grants to companies, municipalities who are setting up glass crushing locations at their transfer stations. again, for the glass to be used for road-based aggregate. So that's one industry sector where the glass, some of that glass that was going to container manufacturer is now going.
Do you, Marianne, know why those facilities closed?
I wouldn't say I know the exact reasons. I only know what's been in print, and the manufacturer, what was in print about the reasons why the manufacturer closed was because their industry sectors, in particular the domestic beer industry, their sales are down. The number of glass bottles are needed for that industry are shrinking. But as far as the processing facilities, I think that was a domino effect because of that manufacturing plant.
Understood. I have one more question for Sarah. How does the amount of glass collected from the curbside compare to the amount collected from drop-off after the switch?
So, right, we know that the glass collected at the curbside did decrease, and our drop-off amount did increase, but I don't know that it's necessarily proportional. So we probably did lose a little bit in the interim, but we did see an increase in the amount that we were getting from our drop-offs, and we did see a little bit of it, and we did see a significant decrease in the amount going in the curb.
Understood. I have another question that is asking what kind of programs are out there to help with the cost of the equipment. And I would say that if you check out the Glass Recycling Coalition website, there's a ton of information there, and also to reach out to us to make those connections, because there are a lot of programs that are in existence to help fund for the cost of equipment. So yeah, I guess we're kind of running over time here, but I just want everybody to know that we are here to help, and we have no agenda other than making glass recycling work. And there are a lot of resources, and there's a lot of positive energy around making this happen, making it work. And so if you are in a hot spot, or if you have any concerns for your area, please do not hesitate to contact us, and we would love for your involvement to continue beyond this webinar. Thank you to all the panelists that have taken the time today, and thank you everybody for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.